So welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to change colour in corner to corner. It can feel a little bit overwhelming because it's done differently than standard colour changes in other crochet techniques. You know that I'm a huge fan of corner to corner crochet, and if you haven't already checked out my beginner series on how to corner, I'll pop a link in the top right hand corner here to show you how to do the basic stitches. I'm not going to be taking you through those in great detail today, plus this is actually done in the mini corner to corner, so I'm using the half double crochet stitch in this square. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out another one of my crochet tutorials or patterns again. Today I'm going to be going through with you some of the rules and techniques that can create colour changes neatly without them being seen on either side of your project, as well as learning how to carry your yarn most effectively so that you don't have to have too many ends in your colour work for corner to corner crochet. As I said, I'm going to be working from my Madagascar Dragon Tree graph. That's linked for you in the description box and again here in the top right hand corner. The chart is available to view for free on the website. If you do sign up to my newsletter from that page, you can get a printable copy of this graph straight to your inbox so you can give this technique a go with your own hands. Now the pattern calls for quite a large section of white, so I already made the first 11 rows of this chart. I do need to point out that if you are right-handed, you can of course work this either way, but if you do download that chart, you'll get the left-handed version of the chart. When you're reading a crochet corner to corner chart, or any chart for that matter, right-handeds read from right to left, and left-handers normally read from left to right. So if you want an exact copy of this picture for left-handed, I've recreated the chart for you so you don't have to worry about knowing which row you're on. So I've already done rows 1 through to 11, and as you can see I have my nice section of white. I'm going into row 12, which is being read from this side up to this side. So we read row 1 down, and then all the even numbers are read from the bottom to the side, and the odd numbers are read from the side to the bottom. The reason I'm not focusing too much on the pattern itself and giving you a total video tutorial for this pattern is because this colour change technique can be used for any corner to corner technique. I am showing you the mini bean corner to corner technique today, which is using the half double crochet. That's a US half double crochet, as opposed to the standard US double crochet that we use in the traditional corner to corner. In this row, for row 12 of the Madagascar Dragon Chart, we're going to start by making an increase block. So we make our chain of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then skip those first 2, working 1 half double crochet into each of the next 3 chains. So it's ever so slightly different to the standard traditional corner to corner. Sorry, I didn't know that window was open, so you can really hear the bells today. Luckily we're not on the hour when I'm filming this, so we haven't got all the bongs to go through. Once you've made your increase block, we would then slip stitch into the next block. Now on our chart here, it's advising that we're going to do 1 block in white, and then we're going to do 2 grey blocks. So whether you're reading from the chart or the written pattern, you can see that the next block needs to be dark grey, and the one after that as well. So here's where I'm going to get to show you the easiest way to change colour when working in corner to corner. Instead of completing your slip stitch to join to the next block in your current colour, this is where we're going to add in that next colour. So we simply grab the colour that we want, place it over the hook with the tail behind, pull both through to create our loop on our hook, and then pull through that white loop. I'm then going to tighten the white loop, and we're ready to continue our next block in our new colour. I'm also going to work over these ends as I go, and in this pattern it is recommended to carry your white yarn throughout your pattern, for the simple reason being it's used so much throughout here, it really would create a lot of ends to be fastening that off every single time. So I'm going to hold those ends around that chain 2 space while I do my chain of 2 to begin my first block, and then work my subsequent 3 half double crochets into that chain 2 space whilst working over those ends. Now the next block also needs to be in grey. So we just need to make sure that all our ends are nice and tight to hide any of our colour changes. And we're working that next block also in this grey colour. So again, I'm carrying my yarn, making sure that it's, when I go through that chain 2 space, I'm just working over the end of my grey. I'll leave a nice long length so I can weave that in as well. And I'm carrying my white yarn, my main colour for this pattern as well. Just so it's going to be where I need it, ready for the next, at the end of this block, I'm changing back to white. So once I've completed that next block, I need to make sure that I slip stitch using the next colour that's needed. Now, one thing that's really important to mention is, or recommend, is to try and keep all your ends on the wrong side of your project. Now we're currently working the wrong side of our project, so I want to make sure that this end is left facing me, and I keep all future ends on the same side. And it means that when you look at the right side of your project, you won't have any tails there, and you can use that as a visual guide to check that your pattern is still correct. So that means when I'm not using the yarn, I'm also going to move it out of the way and keep it where I need it. So once you're finished with that yarn for now, I'm just going to bring it out of the way, knowing that it's going to be needed in the next row, and then I'm ready to do my slip stitch in the colour of the next square, which in this case is white, tighten that end, and then I'm ready to work my next block. Now the remainder of row 12 for me is going to be a large number of white squares or white blocks or tiles all the way up to the end of this row. So I'm going to meet you back when I get further back to the row to show you how I carry this yarn ready for when I next need it. So I've worked my way back down in row 13, working the 9 squares that I needed in white, and I need to join in the grey in this chain 2 space here. So I've left the grey attached. I'm not a huge fan of bobbins. I know that lots of people are. I would actually prefer to keep the ball attached, and if you find that you're getting in a bit of a tangle, my top tip has to be remember which way you're turning your work. I normally always turn my work like a page in a book, but I tend to turn once like a page in a book, and then the next row I'll turn the other way, and that will untangle any of your yarns. If you forget to untangle as you go, if you actually flip your work over your hook, that will also untangle any of your yarns as well. So now that this next block needs to be worked in our dark grey again, I'm not dropping my white yarn completely. I'm just going to hold it against my project and bring the grey back up to where I need it, insert my hook and complete my slip stitch. Now you notice that I'm not pulling excessively tightly here, because what's going to happen is if I do that, I'm going to pull this all the way over to there. So I'm just loosening it up a little bit and tightening the white where that needs to be, and then I'm ready to do my chain 2. But you can see that there's quite a lot of yarn between. It's not tight, and then I can complete that chain 2, sorry. I'm then working over that yarn that I've carried up. So from the back you can see there's that yarn, and I'm working over both that yarn that I've carried and over the white, so it's where I need it to be. The important thing is to make sure that we're not just creating too much tension as we've brought this yarn up. Again, I've got all my ends at the back or on the wrong side of my project, and I'm carrying my white, and as you can see, no one can see anything of those colour changes. So what if you wanted to work a grey block over here and you'd left it hanging over there? No, let's come back to that. So for this row I'm going to work a further 2 squares in the dark grey whilst carrying my main colour. So once I've completed the first block or tile, I'm just slip stitching over and working over that white colour all at the same time, so it's going to be where I need it to be. Just make even those ends of pull ever so slightly so that that white is exactly where I need it. slip stitching, working my last grey tile here. And then I'm ready to change back to the white again. So I can just literally insert my hook into that chain 2 space, slip stitch with the white, tightening that grey and finishing that last tile of this row. In the next row, I'm going to be showing you how you work more than one colour in your row at a time. I'm just working my first increase block of this row, ready to change colour in the next block. Back into that grey. These are the worst colours possibly to show you this. So again, that's my end that's attached to my yarn. So my next block is going to be grey. So I'm going to slip stitch, and instead of using my white, I'm going to pull my hook back out and bring it down, because this is the wrong side of my project, because we can start to see all these tails. I'm just going to insert my hook, and I'm picking up that dark grey this time to slip stitch through. Pulling that white nice and tight, ready to work my chain of 2. Once we've done that chain of 2, I need to make sure that I catch this white yarn. So when I've yarned over, making sure that the white goes over my hook as well, and that I'm catching that colour change, ready to work those half double crochets in this case in the new colour. And I'm changing and adding in another colour with this row. So now I'm going to be carrying 2 colours. Now you don't have to carry them. As I said, you can fasten off and reattach. I just want to reduce the amount of ends that I have in my project. So instead, I'm going to be getting ready to slip stitch with the new colour. So I've lifted these up so I can insert my hook, making sure that those ends are also over my hook. And this time I'm adding the light grey for the pot, and I'm pulling through and also through that loop on my hook, ready to tighten with my dark grey. Ready to work. I'm going to make that end a little bit longer, and then I can work over both of these colours and the tail to work this first block in my new colour. The reason that I'm working over the dark grey is because the next block is going to also be dark grey. So I'm finished with my light grey. Now I'm looking at where my ends are. So remembering this is a wrong side facing me, so I can move that one out of the way. I can leave the tail out if I wanted to once it's been tightened. And I just need to carry the white. So the next block is going to be in grey. Next 2 are actually in grey, so make sure I found that chain 2 space. I can pull on that one just to tighten that down a little bit. Then I'm ready to carry on in my new colour. And it really is that simple. It's a case of keeping an eye on your ends and making sure that you're carrying where you can. It's not always going to be possible to carry without, you know, doing a lot of faffing about really, but if you want to reduce those ends, oh, I don't want to twist in there. What have I done there? You really can carry your yarn quite far if you want to. I don't tend to carry it more than a few blocks. And if you're carrying it up to the next row, it's just making sure that you've worked that yarn into where it's needed. So I can leave that grey there, ready to change over back to my white and complete the rest of my row in my main colour. Just finish this block and we'll have a little look at the right side. You can see where that grey is there because that end is not secured. If I was to find it and just give it a tug, it disappears. That pesky one there. You can see that there is almost no way of seeing those colour changes any more than you see any of the other blocks. On the wrong side, it's just as neat. Once these ends are woven in, we're going to carry these up, don't you worry, they're not going to be able to be seen either. And it really does mean that you can reduce the number of ends that you have. So let's say, for instance, I needed to put a light grey block here and I've left my yarn attached all the way over here. What I can do, if I work this first block, let's just imagine we've turned. Just for ha-has, ignore what this looks like for a moment. So let's imagine that we're slip stitching to join here, but we need a light grey block. You can carry it the whole way across. You just need to make sure that you have enough yarn. So it's quite a way away. So if I was just to do and just pull it, you can see how that's pulling the whole project. All you need to do is to make sure that there is not too much tension on the yarn that's being carried, so that you can pull it up to where you need it. So you need it a little bit loose, but not too loose. So once you're happy with the amount of yarn that you've got, that it's not too tight, you can just do your chain of 2 and then work your block as normal, making sure that you're working over the end of the yarn that you've carried as well. And then once again, you're ready to slip stitch. You can just bring that yarn that you've carried, see the carry there? You can just bring that up into, so once you've inserted your hook for that chain 2, you're carrying it and picking it up, and on the other side you're not going to see that you've carried the yarn because you're working over it. You know me, I mean, I really will avoid ends as much as possible. You can repeat that for as many blocks as you needed to hide that colour. You can change colour whilst you're carrying, working over that carried yarn if you want to avoid weaving in those ends as well. And it doesn't distort the stitch in any way. You just continue to work as you were. As long as there is a little bit of looseness on that yarn when you're carrying, no one is going to know that you took it from all the way over here just by working over it. That's got to be the ultimate way of doing corner to corner colour work, most definitely, to reduce the number of ends. So you can use this technique for any corner to corner pattern that's got colour changes in the middle of it. If you really do want a nice little challenge of using this corner to corner technique, go ahead and hit the link in the description box to make your own Madagascar Dragon Tree square, where you are encouraged to carry that white colour throughout your pattern. It will give you some good practice on carrying the yarn, hiding those ends. But of course, if you don't want to carry the yarn, you can just cut and weave in all those ends as you go. But I will be honest with you and say there's a reason why I figured out this way of doing it, because I simply hate all these ends. Absolutely hate them, and I'm not going to sew these in. I would rather work up a whole new square after, you can tell where I started to figure out these colour changes. As, oh dear, look, no ends at all in this one, all carried, and it just makes life so much easier to not have so many ends woven in. So I would love to see your completed corner to corner dragon tree square. As always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss out on one of my crochet tutorials or patterns again. And I will see you in the next video.